My name's Matthew Fox, and I own and operate Recycles Bikes in downtown Frederick. This just kind of makes sense. There's used car dealerships all over the place, but not so much for bikes. I get a lot of people that walk in and they're usually, I want to say 50% of people are brand new to cycling and they're looking to dip their feet into it. And that's kind of the whole idea of my business model is a lot of people would get sticker shock going into a new bike shop. The entry-level bikes are starting to look more like $700, $800, $1,000. In the spring of 2013, I ended up picking up a bike at a yard sale, and I think for $125. I cleaned it up, took a couple pictures of it, put it on Craigslist for $250. The whole time thinking to myself, I just wasted $125. Like, this isn't gonna work. Sold it that same evening that I listed it. And $125 is a big deal to a sophomore in college who typically has to work 13 or 14 hours to make that much. There was still not that trigger of like, this is a business idea. It was more so like, this is gonna buy my groceries while I'm at school. I was still on the track of, I'm working to be an engineer. I was still kind of early on as a mechanic. I was starting to learn the value of used bikes and which one is gonna be broken, which one's gonna require a lot of work. But I was intimidated against buying stuff that was too beat down. It wasn't until I turned over a few dozen bikes that I realized if I really upped my mechanical skills, then there's this whole way more inventory out there that could be picked up for way less because it's not currently in rideable condition. I actually took a step back from selling on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace to double down on my hours in the shop, taking advantage of the fact that they have thousands of bikes coming through a year, so I just get all this time to practice and ask questions. So there was about a 2-year period where I wasn't doing a lot of bike selling on the side, but I was working a lot of hours in shops. And then I think it was late 2016, I ended up making a name and a website, ordered some business cards on Vistaprint and started treating it more as like an organized thing.
Was it called Recycles Bikes?
Yeah.
That's a great name.
I'm glad you say that because I thought of that name and I was like, I don't love this, but I can always change it later. And I just got too busy doing other things and the name never got changed and there's no way I would change it now. I think it works perfectly. I think the biggest thing that drove me was just kind of frugal habits that have kind of been ingrained in all of us, just coming from a family of 4. But also, I do remember experiences of going into bike shops when I was a kid and not being able to walk out with anything. Because it's a hard sell to try and convince your dad when you're 9 years old, can I get the $600 bike? I'm the third down of 4 boys, so I always had a used bike. And it just kind of seemed like a natural thing, especially after working in shops and seeing that that's not just me. There's a lot of people coming in and they are eager to get into cycling and then they discover where the price point's at, and it was kind of disappointing for a lot of people. Admittedly, there are a lot of people out there doing this. There's just not a lot of people doing it with a brick and mortar structure. You can find people who are buying and selling because they like to refurb bikes. I just kind of took it that extra step, but it really took a while mentally to get there. I opened up in the back room here, which is about a 400 square foot space, which coming from my parents' garage that was like 150 square foot and like actually having an entrance and being able to publicly advertise hours, it was a pretty big step. Obviously, your first year in business, you're working out a lot of kinks and figuring stuff out. But then the next spring in 2020, everything went crazy. I had a good 18-month period where I was just kind of working and sleeping. Finally, coming out of the tail end, things are kind of evening out. Ended up moving into this space in the same building. Moving into there awarded me being able to get a lease on a space that wasn't such an intimidating investment, that I was confident based on the numbers that I had run that it would be okay. I know now that I could have started with this because things have gone better than expected. From the outside, people might think I'm a big risk taker, but I'm actually I consider myself a pretty calculated person, and I don't really want to overstep. I don't think I'd be able to stomach maybe making a business plan proposal and taking a large loan out on a bank and then seeing if it's going to work. Everything that is in here was completely funded from that original $125 that went to that first bike. That bike sold for $250. That money then went to buying a couple more bikes, and it just kept cascading from there. Try to take advantage of the fact that it's seasonal. Being slow in January has dictated where I've gone for the most part for the last 5 years. I did manage to do the US and Japan before opening my retail space. So like you can see, each of these dots is where I slept. This top line is one trip in 2017. The Panhandle of Maryland, it was May. The low temperature was like 28, and it was sleeting and snowing and windy, and all my stuff was waterlogged. And I was fresh out of college. I think I had $800 in my savings account when I left for that first trip. So I was trying to hardcore camp. Then the first week, I'm like, if I don't get a hotel, I'm gonna freeze tonight. And so that was kind of a moment where it's like, I don't know if I'm actually doing this. I don't know if I'm actually gonna get across.
What
But
did you start, did you say?
May 1st.
Okay, so.
So I thought I would be, yeah. I was wrong. The next year in 2018, I did Japan and South Korea, which was a first like overseas trip for me. If it's 3 to 6 months out, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then that week out, I'm like, nobody in Japan speaks English, according to this Google search that I'm doing right now 7 days before. What's gonna happen if I get sick or I need help? Some people will think that this type of talk sounds naive, but when you go out and you do something like that and you realize how much you can actually rely on yourself, because it's not like everything was smooth sailing every day. Sometimes there were mechanical issues, or it was bad weather, or the directions pointed me in a different place because Google Maps behaves differently in different countries. So I did New Zealand next. The thing that was strange about this was I did it in January 2020. So halfway through this trip, I start hearing rumors about COVID and didn't think anything of it. I was searching and I found that there were 8,000 cases of COVID worldwide. And I sent it to my dad and I said, please stop worrying about this. I'm gonna be fine. It's no big deal. I don't know if he remembers that, but maybe he'll see that on this video and say, well, it was kind of a big deal. I flew back early February 2020, and I guess things really kind of hit a boiling point about 30 days after that.
Yep.
Although a lot of people joke that I should have stayed there because
They locked it down.
they locked it down, yeah. Also did this one solo. Probably of all of my bike tours, this was the most smooth sailing.
Are there more people cycling there? Does that factor in?
It's an unbelievably active country. It's kind of funny because you're in the US and you're doing a trip and people see the bags on your bike and you're like, where are you coming from? They can tell that you've been on the bike for a while. And then in New Zealand, they're just like unimpressed. They're like, oh, you're biking across New Zealand? My mom did that. And my cousin. And my dog. It's like, it was just like nobody really cared.
Yeah,
it was kind of cool. Really cool people in New Zealand. I'd like to go back. Got back from that trip. COVID started happening. I had a really hard working year. And I thought, okay, 2021, I ended up doing the US a second time, which was kind of funny because I figured there'd be at least 10 years before I did a repeat of the US, but I couldn't fly anywhere else, so decided to do the southern tier. I thought that going down south would be warm enough during the month of January, but if you remember Texas having that cold snap, it got pretty miserable cold. That has to be my toughest trip. You can even kind of see how bunched up the dots are, and then all of a sudden they get a little bit more spread out, and it's because you cross the Continental Divide, and all of a sudden you go from like this tiny incline to like this tiny decline.
Makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference.
Nice.
2022, I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna go to Patagonia. October rolls around and the Chilean government was still undecided on if they were gonna reopen or if we're only letting citizens back in or what they're doing. A friend that I met on my first trip reached out to me and he said, I'm doing a trip to Baja, California on mountain bikes in January. Do you wanna join? Mexico ended up being a pretty wild adventure. That was the first trip that I did not solo. And that was different. It was really long expanses between resupplies. Ate a lot of garbage that trip, just like whatever it can keep on the bike for 3 or 4 days at a time. We would just go into markets and look at all the stuff in Spanish wide-eyed and figure out, okay, how many tortillas do I need? How many liters of water? We would have 15 to 20 liters of water on each of our bikes. I think it weighed 80 pounds at one point. After Baja was Iceland, which I did with 2 of my siblings.
Is the goal to do one of these trips a year?
I feel like it's kind of changing for me because I wanted to do one big trip a year, but I feel like I'm getting older in the sense that my back doesn't like sleeping on the ground for 6 weeks straight as much as it did when I was 22. I just also feel like a part of what fueled some of these adventures was proving to myself that I could do it. And that aspect's kind of gone. And so I don't want to say that's like taken some of the steam out of it, but I'm finding that getting out on my bike for like a 10-day trip is about what I'm looking for now, and not so much a month-long or 2-month-long full-blown adventure. I had a lot less established 6 years ago, and now it is a little bit harder to step away from my business for that long. I kind of feel like I've developed more of a life in Frederick that I tend to miss more. And after those 10 to 14 days, I'm ready to come back. That being said, when I'm home, after I've been home for enough weeks or months, then I'll start fantasizing about the next trip. There was a period of time where I was very seriously considering doing a global 18-month trip. In fact, when I signed my first lease, the timing on that was such that that's what I was gonna do on the tail end, which I've not told too many people that, but I definitely decided against it. I think if I was gone for 18 months, that would actually take more from me than it would give me, because I would there'd be too many things I'd miss back home.
Did you have a path?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a path and I had month by month, and I had to do a ton of research on like, okay, what's gonna make sense. You kind of have to suffer at some point, because it's like, there's some things you just can't do, like Australia in peak summer. You can't bike across Australia in peak summer. Well, I mean, somebody probably has, but
Sure.
I wasn't planning on doing it.
Do that, yeah.
I was gonna go east because of the prevailing winds globally tend to be more of a tailwind. And I was gonna start by going across Europe, Turkey, the Caspian Sea, the Stands, and then kind of horizontally across China, and then down through Southeast Asia, ending in Singapore. I was gonna fly from Singapore to Perth, cross the southern edge of Australia, and then I was undecided on if I would repeat Japan or New Zealand, or just fly from Sydney to Los Angeles, and then finish the trip from there. But it was gonna take probably about 15 months, and that's if nothing went wrong.
That would have been a hell of a ride.
Yeah. I think I mostly got the idea from watching too many YouTube videos. There's a guy named Ed Pratt that did about that route, and he did it on a unicycle,
No,
if you can believe that.
I cannot.
Yeah. But yeah, I could literally talk about trips like all day. And then that's gonna be able to maintain tension and then shift a lot better. Because right now with this flopping around, your shifting is gonna be all over the place. But typically as I clean a bike, that's my opportunity to also give it a really thorough inspection where I'm looking over inch by inch.